Merry meet, Annie here. I am going to be doing what I am sure is going to be more than one video on books. And as you can see, even just trying to get ready for this, it does look like a storm kind of came through and deposited things all over the place as I tried to decide what kind of tact would I take for talking about books. So, here's where those meanderings went. So as I climb over books, and I climb over Anni, and I settle down with you over what I know is going to be more than one video on the wonderful subject of books. I didn't think I'd ever do a video on books, because there's lots of really good videos out there. But what's happened is, a lot of you who follow me are really interested in what my opinion is about books, and what books I use, and what books I would recommend. So then I thought, okay, and you saw what happened. It's just not a small subject to me, it's huge. They're so important to me. They're a tool. I really consider amongst the things that will be the magical tools that books are very much an important part of my practice. Let me give you an example. I went to Barnes & Noble this week. Unusual for me. I don't have a budget that allows me to purchase too many books nowadays. I tend to buy them used. The luxury of going to a bookstore is a rarity in my life nowadays. Now, I did wander through the metaphysical section, and it was just not very interesting, and nothing caught my eye there, and that's not unusual for me. Here's what I came back from Barnes & Noble with. I would call each of these books witchy books. I love Farley Mowat's books on nature. And believe it or not, I did not have this book, which is Never Cry Wolf. And I've been so looking forward to getting Cy Montgomery's The Good Pig. Are you familiar with this? It's the story of the extraordinary life of Christopher Hogwood. I also got When Elephants Sleep, which is an exploration of whether animals have feelings and emotions, and examples of what that might be. And I bought this book, which, I so highly recommend to you. It's called Clean Food. Amazing vegetarian cookbook. A seasonal guide to eating close to the source is the subtitle. It is indeed divided up by the seasons. I'm going to spend just a minute with this because if you don't have this and you're a vegan or a vegetarian, oh my, you need to add it to your library. It's divided into the seasons of the year with these beautiful frontispieces for each one. A little poem starts off each one. That, as you may have guessed, was summer. Love is to the heart what the summer is to the farmer's year. It brings to harvest all the loveliest flowers of the soul. This is Terry Walters, Clean Food. It is an amazing book about eating in season and close to the source. Those 4 books to me are as witchy as a book gets. As witchy as a book gets to me. Now, I did have something kind of leap into my basket. You know those discount bins they have as you're leaving? Yeah, there was a discount book that caught my eye. It's kind of a coffee table book. Witches of the World. Not a lot to learn from this, but beautiful pictures and just intriguing and interesting bits. The kind of thing you can just enjoy spending some time with. The reason I want to share that is that's my recent purchase. Big deal to me to have that many new books lined up to read. Is there any better feeling than a stack of books waiting to be read? I don't think so. I consider those books to be deeply spiritual and to be meaningful to me as a witch and a pagan and a Wiccan at the deepest level. Even though they aren't specifically pagan titles. I look around this room that I'm sitting in where I keep most of my books, and I have shelves for mythology and archaeology and history, study of the runes and herbs, stones. I come around to the other side of the room, actually thinking of my room as I'm speaking this to you. I come around to where I have my books on nature. Everything from the landscapes of the world, from studying the desert to the Antarctic, all the various climates and personalities of the U.S., books on all of that, books on animals that intrigue me that I've taken up a bit of a study on, and then poetry, books and books and books on poetry, especially nature poetry. It wouldn't surprise you that I have a couple of racks of books on feminist spirituality, and then I have 3 or 4 shelves that are my witchy books, and by that I mean the ones that are specifically witchy books about paganism and witchcraft and Wicca. The other books have moved me and taught me as much, if not more, than the ones that are specifically titled something that would make you think of paganism. Here's an example of the kind of books that are already on my shelf that I have read over the years that have moved me. And what I'm going to do with these books, I'm going to leave it to you that if something about them intrigues you, look them up on Amazon.com or something like that and read more about them. I don't want to take that kind of time on this video to rattle off the meanings of each one to me. I'm going to save that for the more witchy books. But one of the most moving spiritual books to me, I've often called it my Bible, Literally, I will open up to any page and read it, like my Nana used to read her Bible. This is by Frederick and Marianne Bersot, Spiritual Literacy, subtitled Reading the Sacred in Everyday Life. I've often had the question from viewers how I keep the attitude that I have in life. I am the eternal optimist, most definitely the Pollyanna, at the deep spiritual level of Pollyannism. How do I keep it? And this book has actually been something that has inspired me through some pretty rough times to embrace living the sacred in everyday life. A good part of the book is an alphabetical listing of spiritual attributes. The Bersots are particularly good at relating each of these spiritual attributes to books and poetry, music, and movies. They're really into relating these spiritual movements and feelings to pop culture and the world we live in. Really, really powerful. So their first book that really moved me, and which to this day is a book I pick up regularly a couple times a week, Spiritual Literacy. For example, if we go through the beginning of their alphabet, each will have its own section with examples and readings and things to follow up on. A is attention, B is beauty and being present. C is for compassion and connections, D is for devotion, and on and on. I love this book, Spiritual Literacy. And they have followed that up with something called Spiritual RX, the prescription for, as it says here, prescriptions for living a meaningful life. Again, the power of what they are writing is about how you live your life, how you live your spirituality, not separate from your day-to-day, your mundane life. And like Spiritual Literacy, they have, again, alphabetized a whole batch of practices. And we'll take examples from the tail end of the alphabet for that. P is peace and play. Then there's questing, reverence. Reverence, that caught my attention, you know. Shadow, silence, teachers, and transformation. Really, I suggest you look into these books. They're particularly good if you are beginning a shift in your path, if you are coming this way as an exploration, moving away from perhaps the religion that you were raised in or the religion of your family, and exploring. Examples of the kinds of books that I will read that have nothing on the surface to do with paganism, but are deeply about paganism, like those 2 books by the Bersots. Who we are as pagans is our spirituality is not separated from the mundane, from the living of our life, and that's why those books are very powerful to me. You'll know this if you have any number of years on you. It's Dan Millman's The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. There's nothing more powerful than a peaceful warrior, and I suggest you look into that if you're exploring. And then his follow-up to that, which was No Ordinary Moments. There are no ordinary moments. Fantastic follow-up to that. Here's a book I highly recommend, The Circle of Life. It's written by Joyce Rupp and Marcina Wiederkehr, which I'm never sure I'm saying that's right. The Circle of Life, it's the heart's journey through the seasons. Two nuns have written a most amazing book that takes you on a spiritual journey through the year. Lots of poetry, reflections, litanies, things that will move you. Now we have a psychologist who's written an amazing book called The Seasons of Change. It's Carol McClelland. In our spirituality, in our pagan spirituality, we understand the importance of our psyche and connecting at the human level to the wheel of the year, which is the wheel of life. And these books that delve into, this is subtitled Using Nature's Wisdom to Grow Through Life's Inevitable Ups and Downs. Examples of books that aren't pagan in the sense of living on a pagan bookshelf. Poetry is a big deal for me. Oh, a big deal for me. Excellent book. It's a collection of poems. It's called Urban Nature, Poems About Wildlife in the City. Powerful that. We don't all live in the country. Very inspirational. It's one amongst 100 poetry books I have on my shelf. And then Everything is Waiting for You by my favorite poet, David White. He gets it. He understands it. Not specifically pagan. I wanted to share that brief collection of the kinds of books that move me that have nothing whatsoever to do specifically with paganism as an intro to books for me, which is, they're all around you. They're in the library. They're history and archaeology and mythology and comparative religion, reading about the landscapes of the world, the animals of the world. On and on and on. Poetry. All kinds of beautiful, beautiful books that are there for the taking and free at your libraries. So my first take on books, witchy books, is the majority of the books that have moved me have not been something that would be considered officially a pagan book of some kind. They were not written for that audience. They are written for an audience that embraces that and so much beyond that. The wider world kind of books, I think of them. Sharing the human experience. And I'm very comforted by the fact that no matter the path, some of these authors, you'll never know what their actual personal spiritual path is. But knowing what moves us as humans, what we can connect to, no matter our path, it's just so inspirational to me. One of the things these books can really help with, and I want to be honest about that, if you are exploring, for instance, if you are a Christian and you are having some challenge to living that Christian life and feeling connected to the world of nature, these books can help you explore the power of that, of an earth-based practice that blends in beautifully with whatever the religion of your family is. Powerful, powerful books in that sense. A really good place to spend your time if you are on a quest. I'm going to stop this video and come back and talk more specifically about witchy books. I'll be back in just a moment for part 2.